Hi, this is JD with Iron Man from Rockschool Hot Rock Guitar Grade 4.
Iron Man. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, let's give you some tips for learning Iron Man from Hot Rock Grade 4. First of all, observe all the articulation markings on the music, such as staccato dots, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and slides. For example, in bar 1, the first riff there, the second note is marked staccato, so should be played short. If that staccato dot wasn't there, it would sound like this. But we want to shorten that second note. The third and fourth notes of that bar are a slide, so you would pick, slide, and then pick again. So you don't pick with the slide, it would sound messy. Do the slide and then pick the note afterwards. In bar 3, there is like a different version of the main riff, which uses fuller length notes, so the staccato dot is not there. Also, that third and fourth note there are a hammer-on. So we pick the first note, bring the finger down, and then pick. So this was its slid. And this is the same thing with the hammer-on. And Rockschool have put that in a different position there for bars 3 and 4. Okay, so string muting now. The idea here is that when you're playing a note, you're probably then also muting other notes so that they don't get in the way. Eric Johnson alluded to this in his Hot Licks VHS tutorial, which is worth checking out. For example, bar 4, when you're doing the series of pull-offs on the D string, the E and the A string, here I'm muting with my thumb over the top to make sure that we don't get any spare noise there, and also the underside of my first finger is muting the thin strings there so that they won't start resonating in the background and making extra noise. If I made no effort to mute anything there, it would sound like this. And you end up, can you hear that there? Sort of build up of noise in the background, which would just then appear afterwards. So mute the notes that you're not playing, and then the extra noise won't happen. Now let's talk about string bends. You need to know the difference between your string bends and know where you're aiming when you do bend a note. For example, there is a quarter tone bend in bar number 5. There, where we bend the A string fret 5, and we're just going to bend it by a quarter tone. But how much is a quarter tone? Well, it's half the distance of one fret. That's a semitone, bit of a quarter tone, half of that. So it just adds a slightly out of tune evilness to that note there on the A string when you bend it by a quarter tone. In my solo, I used a tone bend where I'm on the E string fret 14, bending that note to the equivalent of fret 16. So at grade 4, you should really know the difference between your string bends and know exactly where you're aiming at, and you're not just bending a note trying to see what happens, you've got a definite fixed aim point. For your solo then, you might want to choose this C sharp blues scale that I used. That gets you in the sort of tonal ballpark of Tony Iommi's original solo. When you're making up your phrases with this scale, don't just play up and down the scale willy-nilly. I like to leave a gap between phrases so that each musical phrase is distinct. This gives you kind of a storyline to your solo as you move from one idea to the next. Given that the whole thing is 16 bars here, I think 4 4-bar phrases works really well. I went like this. Something along those lines, and then left a gap there on that note before I did my next phrase. Again, that's not exactly what I played, but again, the concept is there, leave a gap afterwards. Okay, the high point of your solo should be about 2/3 of the way through in terms of the pitch and the excitement of what you're doing. In mine, I sort of do a climb up the scale. So I start reaching a pitch high point there and then go even higher to that note, and then that creates the sort of apex of the solo. So yeah, have somewhere in your solo that you're going to aim for 2/3 of the way through that's like the real exciting high point. Also, have a definite last lick in mind for your solo so that you're not just totally winging it and you know where the end of the solo is going to come in. One final tip here, throw in some double stop bends where you're doing notes on adjacent strings. And then that really shows that you're on a kind of a high level of skill appropriate to grade 4 as opposed to a single note bend. Which would be, you know, indicative of a lower grade perhaps. So yeah, if you do throw in some double stop bends, I think it just shows that bit of sophistication.